This weekend, Saturday morning, didn't exactly get off to the best of starts, I understand, Drew.
No, it's a slight problem. I arrived very late last night, so on first start up this morning we had a small water leak off the forward engines, thermostat housing, so it's something we take off for flushing out, and it wouldn't seat properly, so that took us about half an hour, but we solved it. It's the sort of thing, though, it would have prevented us going out if it couldn't be rectified, but yeah, got it all going and everything went fine there.
So you made it to the start line in one piece.
Indeed.
Okay, so Miles, talk to me about the start.
Yeah, the start was quite unusual. Kerry, the OOD, had warned us that on the previous race most of the boats were too far west in the start run up in the muster area, and so the run from the muster area to the start was a bit too short. So this time, and he did warn that there may be DQs and all sorts of things, people weren't in the correct area, so everybody was way too far east this time, perhaps. But perhaps not. I mean, because the flag was going to be dropped by the Lymington Bank boys, so it was a bit of a messy start for everybody because it was all, the fleet was a bit split up. We weren't too worried because our tactics in this particular race weren't necessarily to be at the front at the beginning, believe it or not. So we weren't too unhappy with that. Once we got clear, I think we're lying in second down to around Hurst, and then up to North Head. Vintage Torque, it's a smaller boat, single engine boat, but Gary's got that running very, very fast. I mean, it's sort of 110, 112, really, really quite quickly, and heading up to North Head. So we're where we wanted to be at that point in time.
I mean, Drew, did you suddenly, when you saw Vintage Torque out in front, did you suddenly think, oh my goodness, where have they discovered that speed? Because you've been trying to get some extra speed in this boat to actually keep up with Robin X Insurance.
Indeed. As Miles said, our tactics changed. We had a plan, but we couldn't work to that. Gary and Tom in Vintage Torque were running a lot quicker than we thought, so we really needed to stay with them rather than get a big gap and have problems catching them up. At that point, then the insurance, ex-insurance, were just sat on our tail, so it did change things, and they're running very quickly.
I mean, the course was quite difficult because a lot of the buoys were small yellow
Dustbins
is the best way to describe them, and literally a couple of feet high, a couple of feet diameter, yellow, with lots of spectator boats around. And when you're running along at 100 miles an hour, 3 feet off the water, sat down, looking through a letterbox, it's quite difficult to see these buoys.
Earlier this morning, and you said a lot of it now, you tap in the coordinates onto the nav, and you're pretty much following that rather than looking at course charts and that sort of thing.
Unfortunately, Chris, not all the longs and lats were correct, and the information we're given on at least 3 of the buoys was incorrect, and in fact the actual position of the buoys was probably 100 meters out of the coordinates we were given. So it's quite difficult because the speed we're running at, you do need accurate information, and unfortunately it wasn't there.
No, I mean, for 3 buoys, for example, we had to run around the buoys because we know 3 buoys. They were there, but if you look on the chart, it looks like we went inside them because the GPS position was further south.
So has that caused you any issues?
Well, you lose time.
Yeah, you lose time, but also on some of the inshore legs, it's quite difficult when you're given a position of a buoy, and in fact, it's further 50 meters closer to the shore. It can be quite confusing, especially when there's a lot of spectator boats hiding the buoys, so it's difficult to get visuals on the buoys. We're trying to get that early visual on the buoy. You're coming up at over 100 miles an hour. It's very difficult when you're looking for something at 100 miles an hour that's only 2 foot tall, and it's perhaps hidden by a spectator boat. It does make for challenging.
Yeah, North Head is a big buoy, and we couldn't see that till we're on it.
Was that because there was too many spectator boats around it?
It's okay, but it's just difficult.
Perhaps not the step that you were expecting.
Well, I mean, that was a mechanical problem. We would have done better if we could have maintained her. We spent most of the afternoon over 100 miles an hour all the time.
What was the final? What was the literal?
That's a fuel pump problem.
Fuel pump issue.
It's an easy fix so long as it hasn't done damage internally because it's running lean.
So that's.
I've got to go and find that out now.
So. How that literally put a dent in any sort of speed that you had coming into the conclusion of the race.
Yeah, I mean, from 3 buoys running up past into the fairway, the last fairway mark off the Needles, we were running it. Fortunately, the boat runs at 50 miles an hour on the plane, but that's all we could achieve. And for the last 12 miles of the course, we were running at 50 miles an hour, and just hoping and praying that nobody would catch us. Obviously, Good Boy Vodka went past, then Vintage Talk went past, and we knew that knocked us from first to second to third. And we were just praying that Pippa and the others wouldn't make it. And fortunately, we were lucky. We managed just to get round in time.
Yeah.
So
it was a good day, but could have been better. As always, a bit like school.
yeah.